Do we have any questions from the online? Yes, in the room first. Go ahead, please.
Hold on.
All right.
Normally when I come to gatherings of technologists, I hear a lot of talk about augmented reality, but we haven't heard anything on that yet. What do the panelists think about augmented reality as a kind of alternative way of getting to this data, as a replacement for QR codes, perhaps?
I don't view it as competitive at all. Augmented reality is a methodology you can use to visualize the data or interact with the real world around you or relate with data. The question is, how do you trigger that experience? So a QR code does not replace it. A QR code is simply a trigger upon which you could initiate it. You could also type a bunch of things. You could also launch an app, but one doesn't replace the other. They coexist quite well.
I would also add there's two minor drawbacks with augmented reality. It's great fun and it can be really useful, but the two drawbacks are, for me, you need to load the data into something. So you need to say, we looked at this for museums or art galleries, so you need to take a photo, a high quality photo of every single picture in an art gallery, load that onto a database, and then when you scan it, so that's really quite complex when you're trying to do large things. And if you're trying to do 3D objects, again, that's really hard. And then the other thing is, it's not very good. I mean, if you look at Wikitude, which I love, but you sort of hold your camera up like this, and it vaguely says that there's a McDonald's over there, and you turn your camera, and then there's this lag as everything goes. And even, I can't remember the name of the company, it's like Zappos or something like that, where you can hold your phone over a packet of cornflakes and the cockerel comes to life, but if you move a bit too quickly, it just doesn't catch up. Once the technology has got a bit faster and a bit better, then it will be a lot more fun for people to use without it breaking so much. But I think those are two big problems. It's fun to use, and as we've heard, it doesn't. You can still use a QR code to trigger it if you want, rather than having to make an exact copy of every single picture in a gallery or whatever it is you're selling.
So on the question of API, actually, there is work ongoing to expose an API in the access to the OMA-based client. And we are, in fact, have conceptualized use cases, to be prototype, that with the help of an API, and a web app could call that API and activate the normal functions of the scanner on the handset, which will then interact with, mesh up interactions with shopping online apps, perhaps, or even augmented reality session and so on. But this is a very exciting area, and that is in the works. Next question, Tim? Yeah.
Sorry, while the camera's coming around, just on a lighter note, I was speaking with Mike McNamara of Tesco, and they actually have broccoli cam, I think, in Korea, where you hold your broccoli up to the camera and it tells you all the things you could do with broccoli. So
Brilliant.
Tim?
Okay, given what you're talking about with the sort of collaboration between OMA and GS1, what do you consider to be the future of the use of QR codes? So, we see that it's evolving both in the free market and in the, both are good because everyone's using them regardless of whether it's, in a museum or whether it's a sort of, monetary situation, and there's a lot of generation of user data from that point of view, which means you can target, one QR code means lots of different things to different people as they scan it. What do you consider to be really the future? So if you look in 5 years' time, are QR codes still going to be there? Is NFC going to take over? Very little mention of NFC, and there was a sort of brief mention of RFID. What do you see 5 years hence?
Should we just start with?
Yeah, if you like.
GS1 question first. We kind of broke it down into 1D and 2D codes, so let's look at those identifiers first. We have a series of both. We've adopted the QR code. There was a GS1 QR code because we have this methodology where we have application identifiers within the codes itself. So the GS1 QR code really is to try to say we'll carry the same identifier for this. It's called a GTIN, by the way, within the barcode. We'll carry that within the QR code and also have the URL as well. And when we get to a point where the retailers are willing to replace, Tesco, for example, have 50,000 scanners, generally with a 10-year lifetime. When they're getting to the position where they're willing to replace all of those, which in my opinion might well be 10 years before that happens, the brands would love not to carry two codes. If they could carry one code and it could do both jobs. It could do the fast checkout line where you just want, this is the number of the product, quick price lookup, short form on your till row and price, and not slow anything down. And it could also be used in the wider world with consumers. They would love that, but in my opinion, it's not there for a while. Please, anybody else has got a...
So historically, we started this work is almost in parallel with GS1, and they focused on the product, where OME was focused on the two use cases, the direct and the indirect. The direct one, we dare to say the free one, it's not quite free, but the idea is to ability to transfer a business card. I could print my 2D barcode and post it on my laptop or post it on my business card, and you could read it at no cost to anybody else beside the ink, and we have identified a low bandwidth or a very compressed data format. So some of the issue that brought up, some of the issue that brought up earlier about the V card and all the stuff we have dealt with and make sure it's compressed. In addition to that, we actually published the size regulation based on the huge experience in the Asian market, particularly in Japan. There's a guideline tell you what kind of level of candlelight measurement, etc. is all in the OMA spec. It's very useful for people who want to print their own. The professional one, probably they already know that. So if we augment what we did today with the GS1, which is basically based on the product, that would be the first step. We have one client would be able to scan the stuff that OMA specifies, which is right now, particularly in the Asian market, very prevalent, and the product information. Going a little bit down the future road, these product information or the information that you scan, barcode may be only one, right? You can scan NFC, or maybe some other form of camera scannings, or even sound scanning, if you would, to recognize some of these product or recognize augmented reality or some of the other places that come from. So the evolution of it, we start from there now. We built on what GS1 did together, and we'll continue with that path.
Okay, yeah, I've got obviously a couple of cuts on this one. So the brands aren't the only constituents. So this actually does bring into a question about whether and when, and there's some big ifs and assumptions on whether one code will ever be able to serve all the masters. So for example, I'll just take you through a very simple one. A can of Clorox. Clorox wants to be in control of what that message is, unless it's in a retail establishment, and the retailer then wants to be in charge of what that is, right? So how do you control who's in charge of that code without them saying, well, I know what to do, I'll just put another code on the package anyway so that I'm in control of it? Those are difficult issues, right? I mean, we have ways of doing it using location triggering and knowledge, things like that, but it's not 100%. In this case, 99% isn't good enough, all right? So until we can resolve the who's in charge of the message that's going to be generated on consumer devices as well as POS kinds of terminals, you end up with this complicated problem. So we are in a world where, I get it, GS1's a terrific partner of ours, love them, and it's a big section of our business, but I also look at it that there's other constituents other than CPG guys that we have to concern ourselves with. And the other,
So I'm just going to add one thing, because I think it is germane. Because there's this issue, and we both recognize it, one of the attributes, remember I said with the GS1 source is called this trusted source of data. One of the attributes the brands demanded was that the URL is there as an attribute. So therefore scanning a 1D code with your phone, depending what the app wants to do, one of the attributes you will get back is the URL, is the brand URL. So effectively it's a soft URL. I know you can do it a different way, but you haven't encoded it in a QR code. If you want to change it for a day to point to somewhere else and then change it back again, it's completely up to the brand, because as soon as they change that URL, the next time the product's scanned, you'll go to a different place. So, sorry, I was going to make that point.
No, that's quite all right. Totally agree. I mean, that's one of the big values of the system we put in, is that you can change that not only any time you want, but you can set up rules by which it changes, right? So I'm trying to coordinate, pick a large CPG, they have 50,000 codes that they want to have linked. That means 50,000 websites. Go and try and talk to the webmaster and have him coordinate when you want to have content changed on that kind of scale. So,
You want to add to that?
I thought one interesting point which wasn't touched on was what happens after QR codes, where are they in 10 years' time? And I think anyone who predicts the future is an idiot, because whatever you say just won't happen. But it's really hard to disrupt an established technology, which has been around and people have got comfortable with. If you look at CDs, for example, we're told CDs are going the way of the dinosaur, and mini discs were better than CDs. But CDs stayed around. And then super audio CDs are better than CDs and mini discs. CDs stayed around. MP3s are more convenient than CDs. Yes, they are, and people are buying them, but CDs are still being sold by the boatload. So it's my confident prediction that in 10 years' time, we're still going to see QR codes, simply because, not to say that you can't have paid ones, but to print them is free. There is no additional cost to putting that, whereas NFC might be. Even if you look at Microsoft's tags, the late lamented, I think they're just called MS Tag, used multicolours, which if you're printing in black and white, dramatically increases your cost. So if something that can come along which is cheaper than a black and white code, and somehow better, and can be got onto all of the millions of phones which are already out there without a substantial upgrade, then it will usurp it. But I think that's...
Well, let me give a couple of numbers. I can actually back up your point with numbers.
Good.
So the marginal cost to print a low-density QR code at 1 inch by 1 inch using standard black ink, not metallic or be electrosensitive or just regular ink, is 0.0004 cents. So you compare that to...
Close to zero.
I mean, NFC tags, even if you buy them in bulk, are a couple of cents each.
The best case I've seen right now is if you buy them in just paper roll, and they're printed out that way. So the lowest cost manufacturing method right now, it's 25 cents at unit volumes of 10 million.
I'd like to make two comments. One related to Terrence, that you had one chart wishing that there would be standards set for the various kinds of information that could be input. I would encourage you strongly to check into the version 1 of the OMA's mobile code standard, wherein the direct encoding portion is actually a backward comparability spec with the Docomo spec, and they do support, at least 7 or 8 of those attributes.
Absolutely. I think some of
very
it
precise way.
it's just sort of grown organically. So I think, for example, the Wi-Fi spec isn't ratified by anyone, hasn't gone through a standards body. Someone has said, wouldn't it be good if it was this text block follow this text block, and you can scan that and it will get you onto Wi-Fi. So maybe that's where we can work to...
I would actually like to take this, before we conclude, I'd like to take this opportunity. Brian has a question. We'll get to Brian's question. I'd like to take this opportunity to make an assertion that we all want to see predictable behaviors when the code is scanned. And this is why we are trying to rely on established standards, practices, supported activities that develop specifications, such as with GS1, such as with OMA, and now with the merging of the two organization effort to develop a new spec. I'm hoping that, sincerely, that there would be a reason for convergence in the implementations community, so that they would have a set of free standards to look at and implement and achieve a common goal of creating predictable behaviors for code scanning. Brian, you have a question? Brian Sullivan.
Thanks, Brian Sullivan, AT&T. There was I'd like to get your thoughts on an idea that was proposed to the W3C for an HTML5 extension by Jonathan Jeon of the Etri Institute in Korea. Jonathan had the idea that we should create a QR tag for HTML5 to allow apps, for example, to put a URL or a contact card or whatever as a data URI, say, or whatever, and have it automatically generate the QR code in the browser. Okay? Give me your thoughts. I mean, there were actually, we found actually in looking at this, there were some JavaScript libraries to do exactly that, for example. But we'd like to get your thoughts about the other innovative uses of QR codes such as that.
So we actually released it for Firefox IE and for Chrome, and it's a browser extension that you could just highlight any section of text and just click on the button, and it would generate a QR code that would take you to that. So we bookmarked that section, and you could just go off and go. What the heck, I'll give it. So we had less than 10,000 people worldwide in 2 years that downloaded and installed it. So really cool feature. It was made awesome demos. No one used it.
I mean, like you say, you can create QR codes. I've released some open source generators which you can use to create. There's ones which you do it in Canvas for HTML5. It superficially sounds quite interesting to me, but you could do the same thing by base64 encoding. You create the QR code and then just generate it in line. Or I'm struggling to see why I would want a specific tag which says QR. I think it's useful to have them on websites because, as you say, I think my website probably still has one. If you want to take this site on your mobile, scan here. If you're reading this website and you want to call us, scan here. That makes sense. But I think seeing as generators are so quick and easy to use, and whether you use a proprietary one or an open source one, it's a line of code and there's your QR code. I'm not sure the advantage of putting it as a specific tag.
The use cases were interesting. I think, as well, there was a JavaScript solution to the use case. But the use case, for example, I want to create a contact card, and I want to let you scan it as I hold my phone up, right? Or maybe I want to give you money, and I create a QR code which has a URL which transfers money to you, or many.
We're seeing that with Bitcoin at the moment, is that people are putting their Bitcoin addresses as QR codes. So if you scan the QR and with your Bitcoin purse or Bitcoin wallet, it will transfer, the number of Bitcoins to there. There is some I think the payment one is particularly interesting to say, if you got a receipt at a restaurant and it was just scan the QR code on this receipt and your bank will transfer the 37 euros to the restaurant, that could be very interesting.
Question, Ajit?
Right. This could be a very, very basic question, but I'll ask it anyway. I mean, we have a barcode and we have a QR code, yes? And they conceptually could provide the same information, yes? So given a customer, what's the motivation for scanning the barcode? The QR code I understand, because the QR code in my mind is much easier. I know people who do it. I've done it myself. I've actually never, to be honest, scanned a barcode on a phone. I've scanned QR codes on phones, just like Ed's shown many times. But I just don't see in the minds of a customer, it's very simple. The barcodes are, when you come to the Tesco's or Waitrose, you just scan stuff and you pay for it. I understand that. But why?
Well, I think the answer to the question is because it's already there. If you don't want to use a QR code for any other reason, and there could well be other reasons, but QR is not on every product. I could show you millions of products and maybe, 5% of them have QR codes on. So if you want to interact with the consumer for just the thing of providing product information, which could include the URL, the answer to the question is, it's there. So get free, there's no work. You don't even have to have another label. And the amount of 1D, and this young can certainly tell you because he's got his facts and figures, people are scanning 1D codes because there are 1D codes on the product. I agree with you, there's a 1D to 2D. If the 2D was carrying the GTIN, so you could get access to the data about the product, and that's been the problem. I know you said it can do everything, but give it to the marketing department and the QR code will give you a URL, but if you scan the QR code, you won't get the product number, the GTIN, which will allow you to get the data. You can go to a website, but you can't drive, unless it's a very clever app. You can't drive your app which is doing your calorie counting for you from just going to the website, unless you then drag off the website the data element, whereas you can get it direct from the G10. It's a long-winded answer.
So just for background, the G10 stand for the general...
Global Trade Identification Number, so every product in the world has a unique, that's why we're in business, has a unique number. So therefore, a can of Coke will never have the same number as a can of Pepsi, for example.
So I'd like to take a couple of questions from the webinar. There's a question, are there any significant legal impediments to the broad consumer adoption of applications that use mobile code back-end databases?
Yes,
Yes, and I can't go into it.
I can touch on it. There are patent trolls out there. Some of them are ex-OMA members.
I mean, that's what I'd say. Having done lots of QR stuff, I've had various people say, if you do that, we'll sue you, and I've done it, and they haven't sued me, which I think is, almost the very essence of a patent troll. I think, obviously, in the US, where software patents are taken somewhat more seriously than the rest of the world, it can be a problem. But
So we've seen, just following on there, because it's a really scary subject. The lawsuits aren't necessarily against the providers. The lawsuits are against the brand using it, because they're the ones who have the money. So it's actually a poisoning of the well strategy that's going on right now that is very scary. So another reason, and I hate to keep harping on it, but it's one of the reasons brands come to us, is because it's like I can put out and say, I will indemnify you against any lawsuits because I have all the cross licenses necessary. So there's a lot of value in that. Okay.
So one last question. For any panelists, can you list one or two of the most promising technical trends to make, no, sorry, it's the big data question, never mind. So, Tim?
So, just on, sorry.
Okay, so at this time, I think we're close to closing time, and before that, I guess I'd like to just make a continuing remark that this is intended to be a slice of the big discussion of big data for today's theme. Hopefully you would appreciate the kind of focused discussion about mobile codes as a technology that brings together data, product data, consumer behaviors, and hopefully meaningful for enabling mobile commerce. So I'd like to thank the speakers invited to here, Terence Eden, Malcolm Baldwin, Michael Reyes, and Alan Hamid. Thank you very much.